If you clicked on this, then you're either one of two people. One, you're probably thinking, oh look, another woke libtard complaining about objectification of women. Or on the flip side, saying, oh, this is becoming the Genji community with so much complaining, blah blah blah. And to this, I say, you have been deceived, fooled, double-crossed, and dare I say, bamboozled. Though both sentiments are incorrect, what I wanted to discuss is within the scope of that topic, something I feel has been glossed over. I'm gonna preface everything I'm about to say right now by stating I don't care about the ludicrous amounts of on-the-nose, lack of subtle fan service in Wuthering Waves. The game can keep making unrealistic, absurd, anatomy-shattering characters all they want. My issue is how this shift of direction and focus ultimately hinders the immersion and overall narrative of the game, which is like, bad. Let me explain why. First off, I wanted to talk about the characters themselves and how they connect to Rover, which is gonna matter a lot later. Let me be clear, I don't hate fan service. I'm totally fine with sexy female characters, even the over-the-top ones. But lewd, suggestive portrayals can sometimes break immersion or make a character feel out of place in the world. Like I said in the last video, it's wild how 80% of the cast seems to either be overtly sexualized, shy ooh girls or dominatrix mommy types. Cantarella, for example, caught a lot of heat for pandering so hard to the straight male gaze. I wanted to like her, really I did. Her abilities look amazing, but her whole personality and presentation, huge turnoff. The final straw for me was the end of her showcase. The cherry biting, tongue, the spit, the camera fucking, don't even get me started on the comments. Y'all need help, like real help, I'm so for real. So going into 2.2, I was terrified that she'd just be sexually harassing Rover the whole time. But to my surprise, the main quest was actually great. Gorgeous animations, new environments, awesome bosses, air over, so fun. And even a free 5-star that was basically his signature. I was hyped until the very end. Yes, I rolled my eyes at some of the flirty lines like her calling Rover master, which was gross, but she was surprisingly tame, even in her companion quest. Until the end, of course. And honestly, I ended up liking her character. So much so, I ultimately decided to pull for her, and luckily won my 50-50, as well as pulling for Camilla's weapon this time around. I love the devoted sisterhood she shared with her female allies. It felt genuine and emotional. She came across as maternal in a grounded way, not the weird mommy type. It showed a more loyal, protective side of her that I really respected. Her dynamic with Rover felt surface level, which I actually prefer. Confirming romance would hurt the already weak story, and keeping things ambiguous is better. Still, her design and the way she was marketed were huge eye rolls. Kuro, I'm not sure boobs look like that.
Oh, that's no.
Sis needs a push-up bra, or maybe needs to stop using one. I respect her more now. Just know that my extension of grace has its limits. Now, Cartethiya, don't at me for butchering her name. I still can't pronounce it, and honestly, I don't care enough. Was someone I thought I'd like more than Miss Cherry-licking saggy titties. But wow, that romance build-up in her quest annoyed me so much. The boat scene where she fell into Rover's chest and started blush, I wanted so badly to think it was her being nervous from being isolated for so long in the inverted kingdom, but nope, it was just full-on forced romance, as shown from the rest of her clips. They don't even have real chemistry, not because their characters clash, but because they don't click romantically. Rover has these scenes with almost every girl, touching, holding, soft stares, but barely even stands next to male characters. Jiyan, he just helps him up. Bro is 5 feet apart because they're not gay. Meanwhile, you know who did have chemistry with Cartethiya? Cantarella. Yes, I said it. Don't act like Kuro doesn't lean into Yuri vibes. Asian companies may be homophobic, looking at you, Love in Deep Space, but they know their audience is just horny enough to allow some sapphic teasing. And while fetishizing lesbians is not okay, Cantarella and Cartethiya's chemistry, way stronger.
もしあなたが最後の答えに立ち向かう勇気がないのなら道を開けてしら妻子と二次共鳴で得た力よ分断の権能を使って私はそれを完全に切り離しそうして初めて侵食されていた妻子を倒す機会をそれに本物の聖女はかくなる上は偽物の聖女に本物の聖女になってもらうほかないでしょう本当に自由を求めるのならここで停滞するわけにはいかないお互い名式に呪われ翻弄された者同士それでも
They both spent centuries carrying trauma and guilt forced on them by the Threnodian and the Imperator. By the Threnodian and the Imperator. Cantarella wants to protect others from the fate of the divine trials. Cartethiya struggles to define herself outside of it. Their shared pain connects them. Yes, Rover tried to show her she's more than her past, but it didn't land the same way. Cantarella's words mattered. She understood. Their connection felt deeper and more meaningful than any forced Rover romance. Now, I'll give credit where it's due. Shorekeeper's the only one with decent chemistry with Rover. Their history and intertwined destinies actually make sense. Rover possibly being a god and Shorekeeper being his loyal creation, yeah, that tracks. But when Kuro was like, never mind, and had Carlotta fall head over heels for Rover the moment he said goodbye, it was crazy. Y'all could probably guess I have pretty feminist values, so I am very against sex work in the industry. But I'll always support women, even if I don't think that it's the safest industry to work in. That being said, OnlyFans is a very marketable and trendy, lack of a better word, version of sex. It's not intimate, it's objectification and placed on lewd fantasies. This is how hentai came to be. Ridiculous expectations on sexual initiations with women. All these female characters have the same motif, sexy but strong. Now, I love badass women who are also sexy as hell, but there comes a point where it feels forced and lacks any sort of substance. A character can lose its nuance when you start treating them like a sex object. For example, my favorite character in all of Wuthering Waves, my main and objectively the best female character in this game, Changli, is the best for these reasons. Is she sexy? Look at her. She's literally so hot, and her design is stunning. Her phoenix theme, super creative and not the cliche you'd expect. But more importantly, she isn't written as a fan service character. She doesn't flirt with Rover. Her whole existence doesn't revolve around appealing to the player's fantasies. She's just a badass with a purpose, and that's what makes her stand out. I'm gonna be reading out this comment from the last video, which I think perfectly summarizes this. There's also a reason why female players don't seem to like the female characters here. Their gooning over Rover makes them unrelatable. Changli was especially famous among female characters due to her rather strong personality. Jinxi as well. They both have ideals and determination that female characters can relate or aspire to. Even to male characters, many are still preferring female characters that have strong personality or simply strong in combat. Not all just want to goon for harems. This is why Xiangli was also famous, not just because her design, but also because she so far doesn't really care who Rover is, she just wants her holiday. And I think that's such an important insight, and it's genuinely true. Changli is one of the few female characters I've had a soft spot for, even though I've criticized a lot of her for being overly sexualized. She's nowhere near as over the top as someone like Bayonetta, but she follows the same winning formula: sexy plus strong plus an actual character. That's also why Xiangli works. Changli isn't just there to flirt with a Rover. She feels like her own person, not some sexy sidekick orbiting around the main character. Just like with the last section when we discussed character chemistry, not all male and female friendships have to be implied romances to be engaged well by the audience. Sometimes you just need to let your fanbase decide their one true pairings, not force it down our throat. Another side effect of overly sexualizing characters, something I touched on earlier, is what I call the OnlyFans effect. Instead of characters having natural sex appeal that enhances their personality, they end up feeling like shallow, marketable products, like OnlyFans models with no substance. Changli is the perfect counterexample. She's sexy, yeah, but that's not her whole thing. She's sly, cunning, and wise, and powerful. Her sex appeal adds to her character, it doesn't define it. To make this contrast clear, I was watching Lisa's music video with Ray and Doja Cat, and some parts radiated that confident, powerful kind of female sexiness I'm talking about. Then you got this.
You better stop!
It's not even comparable. It's laughable. They could have made incredible characters who just so happen to be sexy, but they put sexy in the forefront of creating the characters. Making the character good feels more like an afterthought. It doesn't matter if Cantarella is a great character. They use the fact that she just so happens to be a good character as a shield for criticism. It's like, oh, she's traumatized. Oh, she's been through this, that, and the third, which is like, we see that, but it doesn't negate the fact that she's still, at her core, a gooner character. A gooner bait character. I'll keep this part brief, but I want to clarify. I've never asked for a perfect 50-50 fan service split between genders. I get that women are more marketable in that way, but the sheer erasure of male fan service is just getting ridiculous. Like, they removed Scar's dick zipper for being too suggestive, yet nearly every female character has visible camel toe through sheer tights and panties. Let me say that again. They removed a zipper, but we've got giant, unrealistic boobs, jiggle physics, and literal vagina poking through underwear. And don't even tell me Brent has equal fan service to Cantarella or any other female character. Logistically, mathematically, that's just false. The steamiest thing we've gotten from Brent is the beer drinking animation with a little chest drip. Is it spicy? Sure, but does it compare to this? I'm not begging for 50-50. I'd be happy with 40-60. Hell, even 30-70. Just not the current 20-80 split we've been stuck with. And like, Brant is the only prominent male character we meet in Rinasita, and you're not gonna capitalize on his sex appeal? You really expect me to believe this is some smart strategy when all I see are missed opportunities and mid results? Be so for real. I try not to be active on social media these days, so I usually miss the mess surrounding my fandoms. That said, many of you have kindly updated me on the toxic, problematic, and at times unhinged behavior from some Chinese players. Not all, of course, towards Kuro and the mere mention of men in the game. It was honestly disturbing reading through it all, like the Jinsei voice actor getting doxxed and harassed just for saying Brant was attractive, like essentially saying that. That kind of parasocial reaction is seriously messed up. I get that Kuro doesn't have full control over this, especially when the more toxic side of the Chinese player base lashes out whenever their demands aren't met. The irony? Some of the same people calling male demanders toxic are also harassing. Maybe there is toxicity on both sides, but it's clearly not on the same echelon. There's obvious misandry and jealousy towards male characters. It even escalated to someone killing a cat because it reminded them of Scaramouche. Now what does that say? Honestly, I feel bad for the devs and CEO. They're caught in a tough spot. A game designer even admitted they've seen a huge demand for male characters, that there's a whole market barely touched. But it's clear they're scared of upsetting the Chinese and general straight male audience, the toxic ones of course. I don't have a perfect solution, and I won't pretend I'd do better if I were Solon Lee. But it's worth looking at the bigger picture of the game's history. The game is still responsible for their decisions though, and with the story already criticized as weak, leaning further into the harem is only going to drag the narrative down from here. Something I'd also like to point out, now that I'm doing these responses, is the absurd amount of comments using love in deep space as a gotcha moment. I said this like 8 times and I'll say it again. Comparing an otome game whose entire basis caters to a specific romantic niche to an action game that doesn't revolve or even include a specific romantic plot is not a good comparison, because it's like comparing apples to rhinestones or whatever. Bottom line is that this display of grasping at straws is so pathetic, and I truly don't believe this is the hill y'all want to die on. I made a pinned comment that briefly discussed this part of the no men discourse, but nobody read it, so I'll reiterate everything. Jiyan's release was early into the game's development, where not only were there a ton of issues that turned people off from playing the game, but he came out at a time when resources to get him asteroids and tides were plentiful, with so many freebies and the chance to save up for him. This subsequently led his banner revenue not to have been that high. Instead of blaming circumstances, they blame his gender, which I hope I don't have to explain why that's dumb. Changli's release and her banner revenue were high, not because of fan service, even though that did play a big part I'm sure, but there were barely any freebies and people had already spent their precious tides on characters prior to her, so they'd be more inclined to spend a little extra when pulling for her. For Xiangli Yao, a majority of players already received him as a free character. His initial banner and rerun obviously wouldn't have yielded the most conducive statistics on a monetary scale, and prior to Brant absolutely knocking it out of the park with his banner stats, Xiangli Yao and Jiyan were the only limited 5 stars. I really will give you guys some grace and assume we all understand why this is such a weird outlook on their banner revenue. If Wuthering Waves made more men, more limited 5-star men, they would do better. The issue isn't their gender. The issue is how they're doing the rollout for their releases and their debuts and their marketing for these characters. I'm not gonna make this section too long, but I wanted to say that y'all are terrible at having any sort of a coherent and conducive discussion. When I say male characters deserve a spotlight, I get slammed for harassing those who prefer females. I never called for an even ratio or even said anything against waifu fans. My issue is the insane male to female ratio and how it messes with the game's narrative and immersion. I don't care if you want waifus. My issue is the priorities that put fan service above storytelling. We can agree to disagree, but stop twisting my words and trying to fight me over something I never said. I don't have much more to say about this because frankly it's draining. I don't even mind fan service, but my whole point here is that we shouldn't be praising Wuthering Waves as this shining example of innovation when sexual fan service is just a lazy, redundant way to try to attract players. And it's funny because someone commented some nonsense about a game made for everyone dilutes creativity, as if this game needs help in that area. Yeah, nothing screams originality like a harem anime game. Totally groundbreaking and has never been done before in any way, shape, or form. I so badly wanted to believe we all had the mental capacity to grasp the basic fundamentals of a conversation, but y'all just love to jump the gun when it comes to me and other people that have a differing opinion. Generalizing me as a toxic person when I've done nothing but respectfully declared my opinion in the video is definitely a choice. I don't care if you like the female characters more, but stop acting like y'all are so oppressed since this game's roster is literally tailored for you. Y'all treat fictional characters like they're real and treat real people like they're fictional, and that's literally so deranged. I've noticed in my comment section and the comment section of any post talking about male characters, it's usually met with, they can't change anything because it's pre-planned and they're just following a roadmap, and a ton basically saying, wait till 3.0. I actually do believe everything was pre-planned, but I don't believe they couldn't do anything about the outcry for more male characters. I saw the old leaked concept art for the characters during 2.0's conception, and supposedly we were gonna get a lot more male characters than 4. And when I mean a lot more, I mean more than literally just the one. Here they are now, and oh my goodness, a lot of them look so incredible. Not just hot, they actually look amazing. And it made me so depressed thinking about the what ifs of it all. While scrolling through Reddit, I saw this post made by video gamer Kitsune on the r/Wuthering Waves husbando subreddit stating, these past few patches and leaks, some have argued that the reason why there's a lack of male characters is because Rinasita has already pre-planned and the devs are only following the roadmap, meaning we won't have more male characters until New Federation /3.0. I don't believe in that argument. My reasoning is that we have seen the devs making last-minute changes but still keeping some elements of scrapped content. One such person even commented in response saying they deleted the onigiri within 24 hours. That's how fast they cater to Coomer. The post goes on to point out how this gorgeous, octopus-themed male character with guns shares similarities with Cantarella, both being based on sea creatures with multiple appendages. Personally, I'd love for him to be his own character. Honestly, I even prefer him over Cantarella because of how creative his design is. There's also been discussions over this particular male concept with the rifles and how he's supposed to be Carlotta's original concept before being scrapped and turned into a female. People also said that this is supposed to be Cristoforo. I forgot to say his name, fuck. I personally hope this isn't the case and that this is just going to be a character added later on, just because I don't like this design. It is such a downgrade if that's the case. There are also some incredible concepts that I liked way more than most of the current female characters. Sadly, they were scrapped. Not only did they better match the apocalyptic, darker tone Wuthering Waves was originally going for, unlike the overly bright and saturated designs we have now, but they looked amazing. A lot of them had this Victorian, Italian, or Greek-inspired style with a dark gothic edge that would have suited the game so much better. In any case, this got my gears going. There were so many scrapped ideas for Rinasita, and it's clear that the whole roadmap argument or failed reassurance is wishful thinking autocopium, and a pile of bullshit. All this to say, it really makes me mad because they're so clearly only picking and choosing what can be changed in accordance to the Gooner community, who don't care about true substance within the narrative of the game, that literally only wants surface level designs that play into their sexual fantasies. I'm not gonna whine about how it's unfair, because we can clearly see that. What I am whining about, as you all so colorfully put it, is how the game isn't prioritizing important, innovative characters and features inside said characters. So much of this could have been solved by using female sex appeal in the favor of the characters and giving the same treatment to the men we have, or even including more men. It's ridiculous how no one is speaking out about how ludicrous this course of action is. The state of the game is heading the same way as Genshin, and y'all don't want to admit that because you know deep down it's true. This is only one symptom of a larger conflict soon to arise. The deliberate ignorance to such a glaring problem. Y'all praise this game so much for breaking boundaries and barriers, wanting it to be Genshin's antithesis when it comes to making actual quality content and good game mechanics, yet y'all are terrified of the prospect of criticizing it. Y'all want this game to be better than Genshin so badly, you're willing to overlook crucial flaws, which is exactly what y'all criticize Hoyushils for doing. I get it, I really do. I felt the same way. But as I got more bored and frustrated with this game's direction, especially with the backlash from Chinese players and the Gooning community, it started to feel redundant. It made it harder to keep believing in a game whose motto is literally, as long as we survive, love yourself, love your game, love your players, and show the opposite. But I guess sincerity and the facade of consideration are only good when they're marketable, huh? This game is incredible. As someone who's played since launch, collected nearly every character, and even recently just hit Union level 80, I've watched it grow into something amazing, breaking barriers and stepping into excellence. But like most things, there's a lot of untapped potential here, and honestly, it's a little sad. I love this game just as much as anyone, but there are aspects I disagree with, and that's perfectly fine. Usually I let these things slide, but sometimes they really pull me out of the experience and affect my immersion. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts, opinions, without ripping each other to shreds. Let's be civil, please. As always, stay safe out there, losers, and until next time, Rihanna out.